Welcome back to the Zig Zone, your home for everything going on in Falcon Athletics for BGSU Sports. I'm Holden Ruck here with you today from the Coolin Center studios, and I'm joined by a room of talent from the Falcon Media Sports Network that's going to take you through what's been going on and what is yet to come. Over to my left, Mr. Foster Rosti. How are we doing, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Glad to be here. Chaz McNeil, a regular, typically in the fall, and back today. How are we doing, Chaz?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about some of the winter sports, but just a little hint up ahead, a little bat and ball sport. I'm excited for that.
Certainly some more exciting for you than others, I imagine. Moving on, we have Tyler Kavelitz. How are we doing, Tyler?
Pretty good. I don't know if I'd say excited, but here to talk about men's basketball action and preview a little bit of what Chaz was talking about there.
Later on in the show, at the top of the next hour, we are also going to call in with our very own Ben Korak and Henry Costco, who are currently on their way back from a trip to Marquette, Michigan for the Falcon ice hockey team's series against Northern Michigan, and they'll give us some thoughts on both the hockey team's weekend and outlook going forward, as well as the softball team, who starts their season very soon this Friday. So with that, we are going to go ahead and move right into the action, and we're going to talk about the men's basketball team. And Tyler, I know you've been saying, wait, we have to wait on it. Unfortunately, it kind of feels like we've seen all there is to see for the year. Tell me a little bit about the last two games here.
So let me preface this all with a major running line in our sports organization, Falcon Media Sports Network, has been something that I penned in an off-the-dribble piece earlier this year of wait until MAC play. Wait until conference play to see what this men's basketball team is all about.
We're waiting.
I am here to say there's really no light at the end of the tunnel right now. I think I'll get into it more, but this past loss against Central Michigan, I believe, was the nail in the coffin to the season. I think this team has reached that point of no return. I don't really see a path for them to make the MAC tournament. So I think the season is all but dead, kind of a lost season. But the past, I wouldn't even say 2 games. I'd say the past 5. This 5-game losing streak that this team is on right now, it's really just been what sank them. They were still holding a little around that waterline going into this 5-game losing streak, but losing to Eastern Michigan, Miami of Ohio, Toledo, Kent State, and now Central Michigan, it's kind of taken this team to a spot where you're now 2-7 in the MAC, and it's your 10th place in the MAC. There's really not a clear path for this team, considering how other teams are playing and who they have left to be able to come out of it and play in Cleveland at the end of the season.
I mean, pound for pound, looking at recent history, I mean, you're pretty unequivocally the coldest team in the MAC right now, that 5-game losing streak.
It was the longest losing streak in the MAC at 3 games, longest active, and they've gone 2 more. I think it's not even a question that they have been the coldest team in the MAC, even probably in the past 2 months.
The only team below them currently in those MAC standings is Northern Illinois in last place, but they're only in conference play, only 1 game difference, sitting at 1-8 versus 2-7, and again, not off of a streak of 5 games lost. Take me through the streak a little bit, Tyler. How did we get here from where we were about a month ago?
Yeah, it's kind of an odd start to it because you came in 2 of 3 you had won. You beat Western Michigan, you beat Buffalo, you fell to Ball State. That was kind of the holding pattern of this team, is they would win 1, drop 1, win 1, drop 1. Maybe they'd have a 2-game losing streak. They still have not put together back-to-back wins at all of this season, but they were holding above that waterline. They were holding right there, hovering around that 8-9 spot in the conference, where they were still in a position to very well make the MAC tournament. But you go and you look at January 18th, you lose to Eastern Michigan at home. You lose to the Eagles by 6 points, a game that, I mean, you really should have won, and you can't really blame that one on the depth or the injuries. That was just a bad performance by this team against a struggling Eastern Michigan with only really 2 guys that do much on that Eagles team offensively, and they couldn't contain them, and you fall in that one. Then you battle against Miami. You have a chance to win that one late in that game, and that's a game that based on how they played against Eastern, was a really good performance. It gave you hope for this team that they will be able to put things together. They will be able to get a win here or there and stay alive. Then that kind of changed against Toledo. Again, you stick with Toledo the first half. They got outclassed in the second half. They didn't make good adjustments. The team looked gassed. And then you move on to the Kent State game, which was kind of obliteration from start to end. You lose that one by 18 points. And then now the Central Michigan game, which, again, you're able to get it within 6, within 10 late, and have a chance to make a run, and then you just run out of gas, 90-71, lose by 19. So I think what I've seen from this team in this 5-game losing streak is, yes, there is a ton of talent on this team. Yes, there is a lot of talent that is on the bench, but the gas tank for this team is just empty. There's just nothing left energy-wise for this team to be able to put together a full 40 minutes. They can put together a half. They can look really good for half a game of basketball. They just don't have enough in the tank right now to play a full 40 minutes. And, I mean, you look at it, it makes sense why you give up 40% shooting from beyond the arc to Central Michigan, who's a team that's not really good shooting. Your top defender is playing with one arm right now. Your second best defender, Derek Butler, did not play against Central, a team that he played for last year because of sickness. He didn't start against Kent State due to sickness. Marcus Johnson right now really doesn't do much in the second halves of games for the most part because of how much he is being used in the first 20 minutes. And you got a guy like Jemai Felt there, his first year of collegiate basketball, is being asked to do so much right now and play way more minutes than you would be comfortable with him. And he's done a great job of it, but you can tell he's just not ready to play 30, 35 minutes a game just yet. So this team is really out of options at this point. You don't really see Yusef Kayat or Sam Towns coming back anytime in the real near future. Doesn't give you much hope for that this team would be able to get the talent on it and turn it around. And I think the story of this year has really been, because of the injury so early, this team never got a chance to fully gel together. They weren't able to practice 5-on-5 for so long. They were beat up, and when you don't have a chance to be healthy, to practice healthy, to practice with each other and not just go out there in games and try to do it, it's so hard to gel a team together with 10 new players. And that's kind of what they've gone through this whole season, along with being shorthanded and being a 7-man rotation basically for the past 2 months.
And it really, you got to feel gutted a little bit for the players and for Coach Simon looking at the nature of, I think really arguably mid-major basketball going forward. You're going to have programs like this Bowling Green program who, brought in several new players under Todd Simon's first year here. And now again, that's been the story of them for the first, prior to the injury bug kind of taking place in BG. It feels like that was really our, primary conversation. Look at all these different guys we're bringing in, transfers, Yusuf Kaya, guys from JUCO level, and how do we get these guys to mesh together? And in, kind of a place where you would hope to try to be able to get some continuity. You just haven't found that at all this season. And it's even the kind of thing that I think leaves question marks looking into next year.
Yeah, we'll get to next year when we get to it. We'll see what Simon ends up doing. I know he has a few recruits that, especially freshmen, that look very good coming in. And, we'll see how players develop, who's able to stay. There always is the chance for a miracle run. You can't put it out of there. Like this season's not officially over till it's over. That's just one of those chances that are the 1, 2, 3% that are so hard for it to actually happen. But yeah, it kind of right now feels like a lost season for this team, like you were saying. And Todd Simon hasn't had many of those. He has 4 straight 20-win seasons, dating back to his last 3 years at Southern Utah, his first year here at Bowling Green. That's pretty impressive for a coach. You don't see that going across 2 different programs to have a 21 season in your first year of a program after having 3 straight of them at your previous place, especially mid-major level. But it really does feel like this year there was so much hype leading into the season, so much momentum based off last season, and you've seen this team win back-to-back games once. It just really is a depressing feeling when you look at the thoughts and the expectations going into the season. I don't think anyone thought that you'd be sitting here on Groundhog's Day, and this team would be 7-14 overall and 2-7 in the MAC, 5-5 at home with one road win, currently on a 5-game losing streak. It just really is a bleak outlook for this team.
Well, I mean, you look earlier into the season for this team as well, look into the non-conference slate. You've got a team that until the score became a little uglier than the actual game was at the end, this is a Bowling Green team that, when healthy, was, giving everything they had to Michigan State, who's currently topping the Big Ten. They're 9-1 in their conference, leading 18-3 overall. That's an incredibly strong basketball team this year. They just recently dropped their first conference game, but even so, that's a strong power conference program. And Bowling Green was competitive in that game, very competitive. It felt like one of those ones. We saw it in football this year. We saw it last year in football. It felt like one of those times where the little guy knocks off the big guy, and they didn't get it done. But that was the kind of upside this team had. That's the kind of potential that this team had and has. And it's really just, I think you said it well, and I don't think where you'd expect to be at all from there.
It's so hard to try to think of what this team could have been if Yo-Yo and Sam Towns stay healthy. Let me just throw these games out for you guys. Southern Miss, Davidson, Taylor, Michigan State, Niagara, and Bellarmine. Those games seem like 2 years ago at this point. Those were the only 6 games that you had this team fully healthy. Those were the only 6 games that Sam Towns and Yusuf Kayet both played in. So every game since that is November 23rd, you have not had this team fully healthy. It is like that 6-game stretch, you saw the flashes of what this team could be. Albeit it was Taylor, you put 107 on him and held him to 43. You lost to a very good Davidson team by just 6 points. The Southern Miss game was the first game of the season. You can kind of throw that one out. They were all trying to gel together, especially in then. You got national spotlight against Michigan State, and you hung with that team until the final 6 minutes of that game. That's a team that's now top 10 in the nation, you could probably confidently say, that just had a 13-game win streak, longest in the country snapped. And then you beat a Niagara team and fall to a Bellarmine team with 2 guys going down in that game. We saw flashes of this team starting to gel, but once you lose those 2 guys, once this team gets tired out by having such a small rotation, this team just isn't dynamic at this point. You kind of know what you're getting out of this team on offense and on defense going into every game.
Tyler, I do have a little bit of a quick question for you.
Sure.
With a lot of the transfers that were brought in for this season, it seemed like the energy was at an all-time high, and everybody was really excited. Todd Simon looked to be coaching his best that he seemingly has been in his entire career. Now he's got a couple just tough performances with injuries, marred and all that. But those seniors that are brought in, how many are going to return for next year with this? I'm not going to call it a lost season, but a really just tough year for the Falcons.
I will say I think it's a little early to tell on who's going to be able to return. You look down the roster, there's still a lot that has to happen. I think how the season end could make some people's minds up. But we know already, you look at guys that for sure are not going to return. You're going to be losing Trey Thomas, Dejon Humphrey. Assuming JUCO stuff doesn't go crazy, Marcus Johnson will be out of eligibility. We'll see what happens on that end. Derek Butler and Sam Towns would all be gone. Now, Sam Towns is a guy that if he doesn't play the rest of the season due to an injury, he is eligible for a medical redshirt. If he takes it, it would be his 6th year. So there's no guarantee that he would want to come back for his 6th year of college and take that. The way Javante Campbell's played, that could be another Marcus Hill situation where there may be an offer that looks a little, grass a little greener on the other side for him than staying here. We'll have to wait and see on that. You would probably expect, you would think Jemai Felt probably comes back. You don't know for sure. You would think Yusuf Kayet comes back. You don't know for sure. So there is a lot of question marks, but I don't think anyone's thinking about that just yet. I think we still have to get a little closer to Cleveland to start thinking about that exactly, because I don't think any of those guys even know what for sure their plans will be. This team still does have a lot of big games in front of them. I mean, they're not technically eliminated from the conference tournament just yet, so they're going to keep fighting in hopes to try to get there. And even after that, these are competitors. You don't want to lose a game anytime. You want to be able to win. You want to finish the season on a win kind of thing. And they have, a lot of big tests still coming up, and they have a few winnable games left on the schedule that, you don't want this team to end the season on a 10-plus game losing streak. That would be worst case scenario.
And I do want to look at it too, because as you said, I think we've been understandably kind of gloom and doom on this topic today, and you look at the standings, and being 11th in the MAC and 2-7 in the MAC is just not where you expect it to be or want it to be. But it is technically, it's very much not over. You have games coming up, and I mean, as you said, it is quite the long shot. Maybe one of those, 3% pulls, but even so, you've got coming up next. I mean, you've got a game against NIU. That's the only team record-wise worse than you, and even if you are the colder team on a 5-game loss streak, like to have, keep a season alive, to keep a chance at Cleveland alive. I mean, your first step is right there against a beatable team.
There is a very real possibility, Holden, that this team could put together a 3-game conference winning streak here. I really don't care too much about the Coastal Carolina game. I mean, I bet they'll try to win it.
It feels kind of weird not to aside, but having that conference challenge.
I get the MAC Sunbelt. I was talking to actually Kyle Edmond about this, the sports information director for men's basketball. And I kind of pitched out there, we both agreed it's cool to have that, but it would be kind of cooler if they did something like, the ACC, SEC? They do that challenge where it's just a week straight or something of these two teams face these two teams, and, you just keep record-wise of which conference wins. Having the MAC Sunbelt, I would just rather have them both at the beginning of the season.
Right. It's a cool premise, but the breaking up of the conference schedule really does not make a lot of sense to me in almost any context.
It doesn't. But what I was saying with the 3 straight I think you could get is you got Northern Illinois, who you mentioned. They have 1 win in conference play. If you lose to Northern Illinois now, we're going to have an even bigger issue on our hands, especially at home. You just cannot lose that game if you're Bowling Green. Go past the Coastal Carolina. You have Ohio, who, even though they're 11-10, they're 5-4 in the MAC. They're missing their top 2 guys. AJ Clayton, Aiden Hadaway, both injured. Possibly going to miss the rest of the season based on stuff I've seen. So that is a chance for you to steal a win there against a team that has been better than you this season. And then you face Buffalo. Buffalo's a team that you've already beaten, and they are 1 spot below you in the MAC. So you're facing 2 of your next 3 matchups are against the 2 teams that are below you in the MAC, and the other team is a severely beaten
Ohio.
A severely beaten Ohio team that they're still a tough matchup. I mean, they're a Jeff Bull's coach team. He is a solid coach. So that's going to be a very tough matchup for them. But yeah, so there is a chance. I mean, after that, if we just go through the rest of the schedule here, this is where it's hard for you to get into the MAC tournament, because let's say this team goes on a 3-game winning streak, right? That would put them at 10-14 in conference play. You are still 4 games under 500. You face Kent State, Toledo. You've already lost to them both. If you scratch that up with losses, we're at 10-16 now.
That's overall. 10-16 overall. You mean they're 2-7 in conference now, right?
Oh yeah. Sorry, 2-7 overall. So let's say
5-7 if they go on the supposed
5-7 if they go on the run. If you lose 2 more, you're 5-9 now. You're back 4 games under 500, and then after that you have Eastern Michigan, Ball State, NIU, Western. So really, I mean, to have a chance, you're probably talking you need to win 7 of the last 9.
It's definitely a tall order.
7 of the last 9, 6 of the last 9.
It does also feel, if you look at those conference standings, you only have to get down to the 5th team. Kent State, a team very much in, conference tournament play, is also has a losing record
Yeah.
in conference. That really sticks out to me. I think that's interesting. I think it's probably just because of the dominance of the top couple teams.
And what makes it tough is, let's say 8-9 gets you in the conference tournament, right? Or something like that. 8-10, 8-9, somewhere around there. 1-2 games under 500. That's the mark you're at, but you have Eastern there. They have a tiebreaker over you. Central has a tiebreaker over you. You have a tiebreaker over Western, but that doesn't even get you in the tournament right now. So the two teams that you really need to pass up to get in there currently hold head-to-head tiebreakers over you. So it just complicates things even more, which is why if you had beat Central, you put yourself in a position where you still have a legitimate shot based on the teams above you.
I think it would feel a lot more like a shot versus a long shot.
Yeah. Right now, I mean, again, not mathematically eliminated. Season's not over. Still few games to play. It is one of those mathematical long shots where you need a miracle down the stretch to be able to make the tournament, which I think is, again, looking back to the beginning of the season, kind of crazy to say. If you were to tell me that a week before the season started, when I was working on the season preview for this team, I don't think I would have believed you.
It's kind of the unfortunate reality of the road that the injuries have taken the team down. Is there, in your opinion, if you have to circle one game, you have to kind of win, but what's the game that you can't afford to lose, in your opinion?
I think it's the winnable ones. I think you need to beat Northern Illinois twice. You need to beat Buffalo. You need to beat Eastern. You need to beat Ball State, and you need to beat Western. Then you would probably have, and that's just, already building up to a tough task. To be safe, you probably want to beat one of Ohio, Kent State, or Toledo. That's a lot of wins, though, for a team that hasn't had back-to-back wins. They've had back-to-back wins once this season. So you're asking a lot, but really I think you got to beat every team at this point that's either below you or on the bubble for the MAC tournament. I don't think it hurts you too much losing to the top teams at this point, assuming the teams above you also lose to the top teams on their schedule. It's going to come down to, can you beat the teams that are just ahead of you or are below you? And this Falcons team, unfortunately, hasn't really proved that they're able to do that yet this year.
I also feel like the NIU game sticks out to me. It's a home game. It's the only team mathematically below you in the conference.
I think if you're looking for a must-win, if you don't beat Northern Illinois on Tuesday, I know I'm saying now, I think the season's probably over. If you lose to Northern Illinois, you fall to 2-8 in conference play.
And then they'd have the tiebreaker as well.
Yeah, so
you're now dead last.
You would be dead last. So that is the nail breaker, I think. Like we said, still a long shot mathematically to get in, still possible. You need to beat Northern Illinois. You need to beat all those bubble teams at this point to keep that alive. It really is one game at a time at this point, where they just have to beat whoever's in front of them, essentially.
I know that it's not in the rear view yet. The final regular season game and potentially the final game, if they're not in tournament position, is March 7th. So we do have over a month of regular season left for them. My question to you, Tyler, is realistically, how can the Falcons end the season on a non-sour note? And I don't think that's a super simple question.
Yeah. I mean, of course, the way to make it a successful season is make the MAC tournament. I just don't think you can lose it on a big losing streak. I think looking at those games, if you could finish the season on a 3-4 game winning streak against Eastern, Ball State, Northern Illinois, Western Michigan, which is possible looking at those teams, that's the way you end it on a positive note. Because that would show to me that, and I preface this by saying I don't think Todd Simon's lost the locker room. I think this team is still fighting for him. But that would be a way of showing that this team fought till the very end, whether it ends out good for them or bad for them. If you can end the season on a 2-3-4 game winning streak, that's the way to show something of what this team and what these competitors are made of.
It's something I really hope to see because it harkens back to what I think we hear constantly, kind of a trope in sports. There's nobody scarier to play against than a team who's got nothing to lose. And as far as the standings go, the tournament outlook goes, the Falcons are rapidly approaching that point.
I think they're already at it. I think this is a team that's backs up against the wall. They really don't have much more space to move back before you get basically locked out of the MAC tournament. If we're going to make an analogy with Wall here, you got to go forward is the only way for this team to make it a successful season.
Pivot a little bit. How do you think that Todd Simon has helped these guys weather the storm? I don't think it's an easy kind of season to handle for any of the players. I'm sure it's, what exactly zero of them envisioned on the year.
He's kept them fighting. Yeah, again, I always think back to my freshman year here. Michael Huger coach team. Huger had success here. Let's state that first. But by the end of his time in Bowling Green, you had a team that halfway through the season flat out gave up. They ended the season on an 11-game losing streak. They lost by 40 on national TV in that final game under Huger. That was a team that gave up. Todd Simon hasn't let that happen this season. He's kept this team fighting. They are just so thin that there's really, I don't think Simon's coached the season bad. I think he's done what he could do with what's available to him. I just don't think there's been any margin of error for this team. And there's not much more he can do as a coach in scheming things up to make this successful results for this team, because you just really don't have anything there to make it into a successful result.
Is there one player you'd like to see just step up their game even more than they already have with such a small roster to take this team to the next level in these last couple of games?
Yeah, Derek Butler's gotten really cold.
Yep.
I know he's been dealing with a sickness, and that's something that has affected him. But he's a guy that was the most consistent player probably on the team throughout the first half of the season, and he's kind of fallen off a cliff in terms of production. And in terms of younger guys, I think there's a few. I think I would love to see some more out of Braylon Green. I would love to see him take another step. Wilkins Jr. exact feels like he's getting better, but he hasn't taken that next step yet. And I think someone like Preston Squire, if he could earn a few more minutes, he's a guy that just hasn't really felt comfortable in much outings this year. If you could see either of those three new guys or Derek Butler get going, I'd be very happy to see that. But I think there have been a few guys that have stepped up too. I think Trey Thomas has looked great since conference play began. I think Jemai Felt has looked great since conference play began. We'll talk about this more, I'm sure, by the end of the season, but Jemai Felt has a legitimate case for MAC Freshman of the Year. He is still a redshirt freshman, so he can make a push towards that. That would be very cool to see with him and his journey that he's had to go through. And I think Marcus Johnson has done the best that he can do recently in terms of getting offensive output for this team. If you don't have Marcus Johnson right now, this team is not getting any offensive production.
I was going to say, there are probably times, you can point and look and think, oh, he could be better, he's maybe not playing at his best at this time. But realistically, when your team is leaning on you so heavily for that production, it kind of feels like he's been carrying a lot of the load.
Yeah, I mean, you look at him, he had a tough outing against Central Michigan, 7 points. But you look at everything before that, 21, 28, 11, 18, 21. He is still a guy. I don't know if he still leads the MAC in scoring. He either leads them or he's very close. The 7 points definitely tanked him down a little bit. But he came into the Central Michigan contest leading the Mid-American Conference in scoring on a team that has struggled offensively, on a team that has not been good record-wise. So that's still an achievement. We'll wait for my MAC page to load. Always wonderful waiting for these to load. We'll see if Foster can get it before me.
I'm trying. I'd also have to say, everyone knows that the ball goes through Marcus for this Bowling Green team, so everyone keys in on him. So he's going to have those bad games where they're throwing two at him and he's turning the ball over.
He still does lead the MAC in scoring. So he's 16.8 points per game. He was over 17 before the Central Michigan game. So he's a guy that leads the MAC in scoring, leads the MAC in overall points currently. So that's been a very big bright spot if you're Bowling Green this season, to see that guy come out of JUCO and put up these numbers.
Yeah.
One thing I do have to say, Marcus Johnson has been very good to watch. One thing that really does just kind of hurt to watch also is because they have to run the offense through him, he has to take not the best shots a whole lot of the time. And it'll be a situation where he's on the perimeter, he's heavily guarded, and the first 20 seconds of the possession, they're just passing the ball around, trying to get into the paint. And you just got to trust Marcus Johnson to throw up a three. And his game works really well when he's acting like the dagger, where you get the ball to him, boom, it's a three, momentum. But when you keep looking at him to like create every single time, it's just not his style, and he has to play like that. But it's a disappointment.
Yeah, I'll say a couple things with that too. That's kind of what I was talking about with this team, has just lost the dynamic part to it. You expect that every possession now. You expect it's going in Marcus Johnson's hands. And it's not only the style that Marcus Johnson thrives best in. Todd Simon's preferred offense, if you go back and look at Southern Utah, you look at everything he's said since he's gone here with Bowling Green, is a fast-paced offense that attacks you in fast break, attacks you fast-paced constantly. It's more of a 7-second offense rather than waiting 20 seconds to do anything. And you haven't really been able to see that this year based on the roster that he's had to play with. You saw flashes of it against Michigan State. You saw flashes of it against Taylor. You saw flashes of it against Niagara. You saw flashes of it early in the season against these, they were lower level teams, but it was when the team was fully healthy. And ever since you lose someone like Yo-Yo, you look at something else with this team. You think about what spacing they can create with the current roster. Think about the shooters that are left in this team healthy. Trey Thomas is not an on-the-ball shooter. He's a guy that shoots best off the ball. He is the main ball handler. That takes away a shooter when he has the ball in his hands. He doesn't shoot the best off the dribble. He's more of a catch-and-shoot guy, which is what he did most of his time at Vanderbilt. Then Marcus Johnson obviously creates spacing. Outside of that, you really don't have a ton of shooters right now, especially with Derek Butler out. Derek Butler's a decent shooter. Javonte Campbell's not a good shooter. Jemai Felt is not a natural shooter. And you just lack spacing at times with this team, which I think is a reason why you've had to lean so heavily on Marcus Johnson. He is the only really three-point threat at times for this Bowling Green team.
And I'd like to add, for Javonte Campbell as a shooter, I think that injury to his hand really hobbled him a lot this season. I don't know if he's going to be that bad of a shooter the rest of his career.
I mean, his numbers were still pretty low leading into that. He reminds me a lot of Marcus Hill. He is a guy that just naturally, he loves to get downhill. I think he's a better free throw shooter than Hill. I think they're very similar from deep, though. But it definitely has hurt him. I mean, you look at it now, defenses know the guy can't shoot. Like, you watch some of the tapes, they're just not playing on him when he's off the ball. They are letting him get 15 feet away from any defender because they know if he gets the ball, he can't shoot it from deep. He's not going to be able to pull up in mid-range. He's going to have to attack the rim, and they'll get there before he does, the way they're playing defense against him. What's amazed me is that he's been able to shoot free throws, and I feel like he's gotten better since he got the hand injury at free throw shooting. Maybe that's because he's had to work on his mechanics. I don't know how he's doing it currently with like 2 fingers and a splint. But yeah, it's just this team, due to the injuries is in the fatigue, is just not dynamic at this point, which is so tough to beat teams that are, based on who they have available, just more talented than you at this point.
I want to throw you one more before we move on from men's basketball. Tyler, as we said, in the MAC standings, only one team is currently seated below Bowling Green, and that's the Huskies of Northern Illinois. Do you think that the Falcons are going to win that game?
I do. I do think so. I think this team is going to be fed up of losing 5 straight. I think Simon's going to have to... I think Simon realizes where this team is now. I think he's going to try his best to light a fire under this team. And I think these guys are going to start looking around at themselves and realizing where they are. And if you had this was a rough. Simon talked about this from the very start of the season. This was the 4-game stretch they were looking at. Miami of Ohio, Toledo, Kent State, Central Michigan, back to back to back to back is such a tough schedule. Doesn't get much tougher in the MAC based on who's been good this season than those 4 guys. If you had a game and an opponent where you could turn things around, it would be Northern Illinois at the Stroh Center. So I do think, I don't know how pretty of a win it's going to be, but I think they will end up coming out of that with a win.
Foster, Chaz, any thoughts?
I will say this. So for a lot of the men's basketball games, I've been on the court watching them play. I'm going to be on the court on Tuesday, and you can tell there's a palpable effort watching Bowling Green basketball at the start of the season. As the season kind of got marred with injuries, you could tell that there was just frustration building, and you could just see that there was an overall tone shift. I believe against NIU this upcoming Tuesday at home, I really think there's going to be a different energy. And watching it up close and personal, I'm excited to see that because, I mean, all of us have played sports in this room at one point or another. You know that especially when you're coming off a loss, going to play another team, a team that you know you can beat, a team that you know what it'll mean to you if you lose. There's a lot of stakes there that we might not see because we're like the number 12 team in the MAC versus the number 11 team in the MAC, but they don't see that, and rightfully so. These are, semi-professional college athletes. Like, they are going to strive to win every game, kind of like what you said, Tyler, and the ones that they lose, they're going to take as hard as humanly possible. I think NIU is going to be a great shot for them to show what they've got.
I think I want to add this on real quick before you go, Foster. Something else, I think, talking about the energy, Chaz, like I mentioned before with Butler, this team, it's not only Butler, this team has been dealing with an illness the past couple of weeks. May not be noticeable on the surface. It is something, though, they have been dealing with. And that may be a reason why the energy levels, especially against these past few games, have sunk down so low. I can't say for sure that they're past it. I would think they're getting real close to getting over that illness stretch. And hopefully that is over, and hopefully they will be at full strength health-wise to the best they can be. I mean, nobody's 100% at this point, but as healthy as they can be to be energized and come out against the team like Northern Illinois.
Yeah, this is where like the local legends will be made down this type of stretch. Who's going to dig deep on this team? Who's going to really pull the rest of the team with them? Someone like Campbell on the defensive end, Trey Thomas, Derek Butler, all these players are going to have to really dig deep to bring the team with them. So they can do it. They've always had the talent. They've had the skill. They just have to dig a little bit deeper than they have all season down this stretch, which is the most important stretch for them.
You know, they kind of need, I'm just going to come back to something that's happening right now. They need a first half like the Cavs just did. Cavs are up 91-46
yeah.
with the Dallas Mavericks at half. They scored 50 points in the first quarter.
Is AD playing for the Mavs?
Neither is Kyrie.
Those 91 points in a half, 50 points in the quarter, franchise records to the Cavs. If Bowling Green could come out and they have not scored, this men's team has not scored 80 or more points in 7 straight games. Their average on the season, I want to say, is 6 to 7 points below that 80-point mark. If they could have an 80-point performance against Northern Illinois, the boost of confidence that they could get if they come out hot in the first half, which has not been a strength of them this season, if they could take a big lead in those first 20 minutes and be able to play ahead for the first time in a while and not have to exert so much energy in the final 20 minutes, that would be so helpful and advantageous to this Bowling Green team.
So you're saying all that they simply need to do is play like the National Basketball Association team, Cleveland Cavaliers.
I'm not saying straight there. I'm just saying.
That's a good level to hit right there.
I'm just saying, like, if you can come out with that explosiveness, and like they just have not been able to punch a team in the mouth first. They've been a team that are getting beat up in the first half, and all of a sudden you're playing catch up the whole time. I think it was against Toledo, I want to say they went down 7-0, 9-0 to start the game, in a rivalry game on your home court. They were just playing catch-up basketball the entire game. If you can flip that script and you can have a huge output in that first half, that might be the key to success for this team down the stretch.
It does feel like they're just not built to play those close or from behind games, and that's kind of the reason for the losses. They just don't have enough in the tank. So I think you're right. I do think that being able to build one of those strong starts to the game is kind of the key for them being able to get any more wins, let alone stack some wins and, potentially have a bit of a miracle at this point. We're going to move on. That'll wrap up our men's basketball for today. Before we do, you can find any recaps of men's basketball action from Tyler Cavalitz as well as Artie Abrego on bgfalconmedia.com, as well as find rebroadcasts of our calls for those games on the BG Falcon Media YouTube as well. We're going to take a brief step away just for station identification, but don't go anywhere because we'll be right back, and you're listening to the Zig Zone.
Hey everyone, Falcon Media Sports Director Lucas Kleinmeyer here. You're listening to WBGU 88.1 FM, home of the Falcon Media Sports Network.
We're back here with the Zig Zone, your only show with everything going on in BG Falcon sports. Once again, for Tyler Cavalitz, Ches McNeil, and Foster Rostai, I'm Holden Ruck, and we're going to move in now to the women's basketball portion of today, because women's basketball, once in kind of a similar situation, I think some would argue, looking at the outlook for their season as the men's team, now shaping up a lot better. In particular, the last two games, really, really strong performances. An 82-69 win over the Akron Zips on Wednesday. And then just yesterday, a second half comeback beating Central Michigan very close, 76-69. And I just want to open it to the room. What do you see from this team? What do you think's been a strength?
So, I think it's a combination of things.
I have an answer myself, too.
Okay, do you want to rip your answer first?
I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, so I will say this. I think that against Toledo, I saw one of the biggest weaknesses I've seen of this women's team. They struggled to get into the paint, and when they tried to shoot outside the arc, it just wasn't looking good. Against Akron, though, what they did was they found a quick hit of momentum. The Falcons usually outscore their opponents in the first and get outscored in the second, third, and fourth quarters. That did not happen against Akron. What happened against Akron was a ability to kind of get the Zips on their heels early, and then you can spread the ball around, shoot with the hot hand. You don't need to, kind of like what BGSU men's basketball does, where you're focused only on Marcus Johnson. Women's basketball, they get to spread the ball. They get to shoot good early looks because they have trust in every single player on the floor. We saw Paige Kohler had a phenomenal game against Akron. The game before, Lexi Fleming was very good. It just goes from person to person, and you had Lexi Fleming, Defensive Player of the Week, I believe, or Defensive Player of the Game, not of the week, of what she did against Akron. There's just so much, and I think the number one thing that stands out to me, the complete cohesion of this team. They do play really well together, and they can step up when they need it from anybody on the floor.
It does feel like you look at the last two contests, and I mean across, the 1 to the 5, like everyone is kind of playing at their best. You look at the post where there were some more problems for the team earlier, and you're having stronger games from Erica Porter, leading all players with her plus-minus rating in the game against Central. The thing that really, really sticks out to me, and it's partially just because it's a little bit of building on like a prediction, suspicion, and maybe just hope to see that I had earlier in the season, but I feel like you really cannot overstate the emergence of Paige Kohler. Like she's been solid in playing basically every minute last year as a freshman while Lexi Fleming was injured. She is certainly a strong performer out of the gate, but it really, really feels like, especially recently, that she's elevated her game. This is somebody that we saw early in the season have a game where she logged about 7 minutes and fouled out with like a basket. And now you've got a game where you're leading your team in scoring with 28 points and then 7 assists, 7 rebounds, and 3 steals. Then following that, Akron performance, as you mentioned, up by leading the team in scoring with 17 against Central Michigan. I think we've talked about how guard-centric this team is. 3 of your best players, Lexi Fleming, Amy Velasco, Paige Kohler. Amy Velasco, I suppose we've talked about a little less of late. She's kind of had a quieter impact. But even so, you look at last year, and we saw what Amy Velasco was able to do in a lot of ways to lead that team. Lexi Fleming kind of defies definition. We don't really need to say more about her at this point. Everyone, we know how good she is. And seeing arguably the weaker of the 3 now playing as well as them, I think is a very strong asset to the team, and 2, not necessarily unexpected, but just something we haven't previously seen. And I think there's a lot of excitement for that.
Yeah, I think she just struggled a little bit early on to find her role. You talked about last season how she was kind of, as a freshman, one of the go-to people. And now that Amy Velasco has played so well and Lexi Fleming's starting to play back to the Lexi Fleming level that we know, that Paige Kohler's been able to not have as much on her shoulders, but also be able to just focus on improving her own game instead of being forced to put up a certain amount of output. And it just feels like she's gotten a lot more comfortable. I mean, look at that dagger deep three-pointer that she had this past game.
Man.
That was a comfortable Paige Kohler that I don't think we saw a ton of last year, and it's kind of scary for opponents. I would also say something else that this team, I think, has gotten a lot better at down the stretch recently is discipline. They are a lot more disciplined, especially when you look into these numbers. Turnovers had been an issue at times this season. Past 2 games, they've committed 13 and 9 turnovers. They've forced 20 and 15. You've won the turnover battle in a big way past 2 games. And you look at fouls, which, again, a major issue early on in the season. Past few games, you committed 16, you drew 28. Committed 22, drew 24. Committed 15, drew 22. Even at 14, committed 15, drew 17. Committed 16, drew 18. You have not committed more fouls than your opponent since the Miami of Ohio game on January 11th. That's a really good sign for this team because they were kind of shooting themselves in the foot earlier in the season in a lot of these games, and they've done a better job of getting out of their own way recently and just playing a lot more efficient game.
Just strictly a winning recipe when you're not committing those mental errors.
It sounds simple, but it's hard to do.
Right. I was going to say, if it was easy to do, everybody would do it. But I think they're in a really, really interesting spot because of like, I know you're sitting at an overall record of 11-10. You're 5-5 in the conference, so you're sitting in that 6th-seeded spot if the regular season were to end right now. But I don't know how the room feels about this. I feel like from what I've watched, and it is like primarily the eye test, I feel like they're a lot better than the record says, like their potential.
I think it was, we'll see what everyone else says here. I think early in conference play dragged them down a ton. I don't think they played well early in conference play. I think the way the team has been playing, probably, think back, past 5 games probably, it's been a lot better than the record shows. They're probably right around that level of the Toledo team. I wouldn't rule it out that they could beat them second time around.
Yeah, they're starting to get in a really good groove here. These last couple of games, especially against Akron, 20 assists on 27 made shots, and versus Central Michigan, that 14 assists on 21 made shots. They found a good groove to move the ball, which is opening up everything for everyone. I mean, you want to talk about Kohler getting open shots, coming off screens, getting great passes, hitting the open shots. I mean, it started Akron game. Her first 3 shots were misses, but they were wide open threes. So she's coming off down screens, getting open, and when they start falling, it opens everything up for the team.
I really am intrigued by those standings also because I think compared to the men's standings, and partially it might be because Bowling Green's in the middle of it, and so I'm maybe more attentive to that, but it feels like there's a lot There's a clearer definition between the good teams and the bad teams as far as the women's standings go. You look at the top of it, Ball State 10-0 in conference, 18-4 overall, strong team, 12-game win streak. You've got Buffalo and Kent State sitting at 8-2 in conference, both 15+ wins. Toledo 7-3 conference, 15 wins. Miami 12 wins, 5-5 in conference. And then you've got Bowling Green and Western, who are both also 5-5 in conference. But Western Michigan right now, despite having that same conference record, overall, they're 4 games behind, which, I don't know if you attribute to a hard out-of-conference schedule, what factor you look at there. And after that, it's a drop-off to the below 500 in conference teams. You have Central Michigan at 4-6, Northern Illinois and Akron at 3-7, Ohio at 2-8, Eastern Michigan currently winless in the conference. Just kind of a brutal look for them there. But regardless, the streaks, really what gets me. You look at Ball State, 12-game win streak, Buffalo, 6-game win streak, Kent, 5-win streak, Toledo, 3-game win streak, Bowling Green sitting at 2. Loss streaks also so dramatic. Eastern Michigan, 14 straight losses. Akron, 6. Western, 3. It feels like there are a lot less question marks looking at this picture for the tournament because, you look at the kind of cutoff line and you've got a couple of teams that are hovering around 500 in conference and a pretty steep drop-off there. So I don't really think... To me, it's a lot less of a matter of who is going to be in the tournament as just kind of the order that it stacks up. Looking ahead, and again, I'll kind of just throw this to all of you because I know none of you three are any of our primary beats for the women's basketball team, but they've got a stretch coming up here. They play Ball State this Wednesday, and that is, far and away the top dog in the MAC right now. After that, they have the MAC Sunbelt Challenge again, which we can, again, discuss why does that make any sense, but they'll be at Arkansas State Saturday. And then they don't play again until next Saturday. They play Central Michigan, who is, a game behind them in conference standings right now. But what do you think? What do you think's the outlook right now? How high do you think, if you had to give your own opinion, do you think this team can get heading into tournament?
High in the standings?
Yeah. Because I don't, knock on wood here, certainly. I don't think it's much of a question if they're going to make it, if they play the way they have.
I think you're right. I do think they will 100%, from what we're seeing right now, make the tournament. But I think the number one thing is you look at who they're behind. Miami, 5-5, they're tied in conference. I think they do end up taking a game away from Toledo. That they would need Toledo to fall a little bit more to pass them up. I think their ceiling right now, they're playing very good, but they still are playing a form of basketball where they can lose games. They can make mistakes. They're not playing the most clean basketball. They're missing a good chunk of shots, but I will say, I think they pass up Miami at the end of the season, and they have the chance to pass Toledo. I think their ceiling is 4th in the MAC, going from 8 just a week ago. That's pretty good.
I agree with that. I think 4th. You look at the 3 teams above Toledo right now. Ball State's undefeated in conference play.
You're not passing them.
No. Buffalo's lost 2 games all year.
Not passing them.
Kent State's lost 2 games in conference play.
Exactly.
Yeah, nope.
Like those
kind of
are...
untouchables.
Yeah.
You look at them. Ball State is the highest powered team in the MAC currently. Buffalo has... Allie Becky's been playing phenomenal this year, but... Chella Watson may very well be the best player in the MAC. She has a claim to that. She has an argument for that. And Kent State, in my opinion, might be the most well-rounded team. Ball State's making that hard to say, even more game by game. But especially outside of Ball State, I think Kent State's by far the most well-rounded team. And they're a team that beat Buffalo and handed them their first loss this season. So, I think the Toledo team is beatable. What we saw against the Bowling Green team. I think Bowling Green can beat Toledo. It's going to be hard to get past them. You're going to need to beat them, but I agree with Chaz there. I think it's going to be hard to get higher than the 4th, but I think 4th is very well possible for this team.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I just don't think that those top 3, I don't think anybody's really going to contest them, even though you look at the conference standings and Toledo is only a game behind Kent in the conference standings. I just feel like those top 3 seem really strong. And I could be wrong, because again, you look at the overall record, and kind of favors Toledo. They're 15-5 versus 15-7, only one game back in conference standings. It could be anyone's spot. I do think they're going to be able to springboard Miami there. I've got them at the 5 is my prediction. I don't know if they're going to be able to get that 4 spot. I think they definitely can. The potential's there, but I see them getting the 5th.
And that's what I'm thinking too. 5th is the easier of the 2 spots to go after since you're tied with Miami and standing in record-wise already. But getting Toledo to not only beat them, but also have them maybe drop a couple games in MAC play so that you can really have that comfortable lead on them, I think that's much more of a difficult ask.
I do want to ask this around, though. How much do we all think that the seeding matters when it comes tournament time in Cleveland neutral site?
I was actually just about to say that. I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
Because I always think back last year, men's side, it is slightly a different game, men's and women's basketball, but for the most part, this holds true. You had Kent State up against Toledo. Toledo, 4 straight time MAC regular season champion. Kent State 8 seed in the tournament, and they beat Toledo first round. I just think, it's a little different than March Madness. March Madness, you kind of move on to different neutral sites, and it's just a higher intensity. It kind of holds true there, too. Seeding doesn't matter too much in all these tournaments. It's neutral site. I know some people want to get as high up the standings as they can. I kind of feel like if you're not the conference champion, I don't think it matters too much where you're at. As long as you make it, you got a chance.
Well, I want to say this because I do think it bleeds in really well. Holden, when you asked the initial question, you said heading up into tournament play. I think Bowling Green is going to make the tournament, obviously.
I think we all agree with that.
But
okay, so using this wording just because we all agree. Once they get into the tournament, I think Bowling Green can become one of those really dominant teams if they follow Fred Shamil's plan of how he wants to attack a game. He wants to upset and disrupt what his opponents do early. Against Akron, it was forcing turnovers. If you can do that, his number one goal, quick early shots. That's the number one thing he wants. Spread the ball and kind of disrupt whatever they're trying to do offensively, get their defense a little frazzled, and then the offense is going to have trouble getting things to land. And you look at Toledo, I think much more so part of getting Shamil's plan into effect is instilling confidence in his team. To get confidence into his team, I think you got to get a win at the Stroh Center against Toledo. Now, if you head into the tournament as the 4 seed, I think we all agree on the point that it doesn't really matter what you're seeded once you're in there, besides if you're the conference champion, obviously. But once you're in there, if you're Bowling Green, you're the 4 seed. You've just knocked down a couple very good opponents. Toledo has just lost to you. And Toledo, looking at their schedule, they have the odds to drop 2 or 3 pretty big games. They play us at the Stroh Center on the 22nd of February. They play Ball State at home 3 days prior to playing us. So it's Ball State, Bowling Green, Buffalo is a 3-game stretch. They play Buffalo on the 26th. They still have 2 Buffalo games and a Kent State to end their play. If we jump Miami, I don't think it's a stretch to say we jump Toledo. And if that's the case, and we're playing good, consistent volleyball, we can afford to lose games, but then we're going in as the 4 seed. I think we're as dangerous as those top 3.
Is Buffalo, after Toledo plays us, is Buffalo a road game or are they home?
So Buffalo is a home game for Toledo, but the next game for Toledo is February 5th on the road at Buffalo. So they play them twice. So they'll play them at Buffalo, then they've got say what you want to say.
Tough stretch.
Yeah, really tough for them.
They've got Old Dominion also. Let's throw that in there, some random. And then Akron.
Gotta love the MAC Sunbelt Challenge.
Yeah,
gets better game by game we see.
Exactly.
Wild.
So Old Dominion and Akron is like a little gap. Then Ball State, Bowling Green, Buffalo, Central Michigan, NIU, and Kent State to wrap things up. So as a whole, they've got a really tough stretch. You've got Miami, who all you need them to do is really lose more games than you lose, and you jump them. So,
Simple math.
Yeah, that's
Silly,
pretty simple math.
but
pretty easy. Huh?
But yeah, as a whole, I think it all goes to having a moral victory and having a very we can do this mindset, it versus men's basketball, where if you make the tournament, it's more so a victory in and of itself. I don't think it's a victory if women's basketball make the tournament. I think it's a victory if they win 1 or 2 games.
So something else I want to point out that I just now noticed looking at the standings is it really is a bunch of teams compact with each other in the women's basketball standings. The top 6 teams in the conference right now. I see you're trying to cut me off there, Holden.
Oh my goodness.
Top 6 teams in the conference right now for women's basketball are coming off a win or have a winning streak, and the bottom 6 have all lost their last game.
I did notice that. It's very satisfying looking at the standings.
It's kind of like a bell pepper thing too, almost. I don't know. Like your top team has 12 straight wins. Last team.
Interesting.
A horseshoe, maybe?
I don't know.
A bell pepper. I'm hungry too, but I don't know. I didn't think it was going to bleed into.
It's been a while, but I don't know. It's just it kind of goes down like the top 3: 12 straight wins, 6 straight wins, 5 straight wins, 1 straight, 2 straight, and then losses from the bottom top: 14 in a row, 2, 6, 1, 2, 3. I feel like you don't see that often where it's pretty clear cut who the top teams in the conference are. You see the top 3, you see it based off the record and the win streaks, and you can obviously tell on the bottom based on the losses in a row and the records who are the bottom teams.
No, you're right.
It's very packed together.
I do think even considering, like an NIU Central Michigan being a worse record right now, it's like those top 3, 5, 6, and 12-game win streaks, and then it's kind of a gap, and it's like, okay, Toledo, Miami, BG, Western, Central, Northern Illinois, all kind of like, you can kind of lump them all together. And they're not exactly the same, but, between the overall records and that conference record, and I would argue you could kind of say the same about Akron's overall, but that streak is really where I kind of draw that cut line right now. 6-game losing streak for the Zips. Ohio sitting at 2-8 in conference. Eastern kind of, again, we don't really need to talk about them. 0-10 conference. It is really interesting. It's kind of clearly defined in a way that I feel like we don't see a whole lot.
Yeah, I haven't looked at Eastern until now. What, in 19 overall?
I know, that caught my eye,
That's
too.
rough.
Their only win came 72-60 over Xavier on December 1st.
Wow.
The next closest they got, they had an overtime loss against UTRGV, who, if I'm being honest...
UTRGV?
University of Texas Rio Grande?
Yeah,
Rio
University
Grande
of Texas.
Valley. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Wow.
UTRGV.
I think that's just too much for the MAC to put on there all at once.
5-letter abbreviation for a team?
UTRGV. Yeah. No kidding.
Well, it's shorter than University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, so it is a good abbreviation.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I will say, while we're on the topic and getting slightly derailed by long names, I was on the WBGU PBS call for the gymnastics meet that the Falcons hosted last Sunday, and the teams they competed against were Central Michigan, who, by the way, they're really, really good, and the other one was Southeastern Missouri State. Or SEMO. SEMO, much easier, much nicer to say. But Southeastern Missouri State was absolutely kicking me.
Well, because I looked at that too. I think it's weird that South gets 1, Eastern gets another letter,
Missouri gets 2,
and then Missouri gets 2, and no State.
Nothing.
Yep, exactly.
Why is it not SEMS?
I was gonna say SEMS.
Or like SEMO State. That sounds tough.
SEMO State is good. Yeah.
Oh,
SEMO
State.
State.
I guess if you are Southeastern Missouri, then you just or Southeastern Missouri State.
Consider Southeastern one word there. So
yeah,
SEMO.
Oh, what about SMS? Like the text messages, like SMS.
I'm a little colder on SMS, Chaz, if I'm being honest.
I think we're starting to overthink it now.
I think
we definitely are
losing the plot a little bit.
Nah.
Fully off the rails at this point.
Well, anyway, wrapping up our basketball, I feel like it's really interesting and completely different reasons that the next 2 games, this Tuesday and Wednesday, are so compelling. Unfortunately, that Wednesday game for the women's team is going to be in Muncie, not a home game where you maybe like it, but you've got the worst of the conference for the men's team coming up next. You got the best of the conference coming up for the women's team in Ball State. So that is going to do it for us, unless anybody has anything they'd like to add on the note of the women's team. that's going to do it for our basketball talk today. And as we are now at the top of the hour, we are going to take a quick step away for station identification. And when we come back, we are going to have at least one, if not both, of Ben Korak and Henry Costco on their way back from Marquette to take us through some softball and hockey action. So don't go anywhere, because we're about to start the second hour of the Zig Zone show here on WBGU 88.1 FM.
Hey everyone, Falcon Media Sports Director Lucas Kleinmeyer here. You're listening to WBGU 88.1 FM, home of the Falcon Media Sports Network.
Hi, I'm Trina Lisa Vering. I'm a singer and songwriter from Copenhagen, Denmark. I have a very important message for y'all. Du kan bygge broer i din egen hjerne, eller fremelske global fred og kærlighed, alt sammen på en og samme tid, ved at lytte til The World Music Show søndage fra 6 til 8 p.m. på WBGU 88,1. Den kan også streames fra bgfalconmedia.com.
That's right. You can build bridges in your own brain and promote global peace and love all at the same time, just by listening to the World Music Show on Sundays from 6 to 8 p.m. on WBGU 88.1 and streaming at bgfalconmedia.com.
Welcome back to the second hour of the Zig Zone here, and I'm very happy to move on. We're going to we'll do hockey first because it was just going on last night and the night before, and we've got Ben Korak and Henry Costco on their way back from the site right now. How are we doing, guys?
Driving home down I-75. Henry and I both here in the car, and you guys are a little bit quiet. I don't know if you can fix that on your end, but yeah, excited.
Yeah, and take me through, talk about the series, the Northern Michigan series, just everything you saw with that. A lot of points taken there, certainly. Nothing to be disappointed about.
Yeah, I think it was a dominant performance over Northern Michigan, 3-2 overtime win in the first game, took 2 points in the CCHA. And then the second game they took all three. It felt a little bit tighter than it was, I think. If you listen to the broadcast or watch the game, some weird happenings going on in both games, but BG was the better team. They played better, and they capitalized on opportunities they needed to, and took 5 points in the CCHA. Didn't rise in the standings at all, but they separated themselves a little bit from the fifth team, which, of course, they're separating themselves into that home playoff, which is a really good thing to see, and some pretty good things to see offensively and defensively from this team. I just like the way they had. I like the way they played, and it was a good 5-point weekend before you head into a tough St. Thomas series this coming week.
Yeah, and like you said, no motion in the standings for them, but I do think it is a very optimism-inspiring thing to see them kind of settle into that top spot. You've got, looking at points percentage, you've got 0.6 for Bowling Green, Michigan Tech at 0.63, Minnesota State at 0.667, Augustana at 0.722, taking that top spot, and that's a new motion for them, isn't it?
Yeah, there is a decent amount on the top there, and Augustana is one that Minnesota State split in the series. Augustana took that top spot because they swept Lake Superior State. Not surprising at all. That Augustana is a real good team. We saw them last week play with BG. I think it is a little bit consoling to Bowling Green fans that you only allowed 2 goals to Augustana, and they're now the number 1 team in the CCHA. So you know that you can hold up with the top team in the CCHA, which is real good. But this weekend's going to be a real big one against St. Thomas. St. Thomas is in that 5 spot. They're quite a large amount of points percentage behind Bowling Green. But if BG doesn't at least get a sweep this week, or at least get a split this weekend and take 3 points, they're going to be in a real battle with Michigan Tech and St. Thomas for that 4th spot in the CCHA. And I don't think they really want to have that battle. Feels like both of those teams over the last year or so have Bowling Green's number, both the Huskies and the Tommies. So, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a good weekend for BG, and we've said it every single weekend since the Lake Superior State that it's a real big weekend, and it is. Every point matters when you get down to such a tight top in the CCHA, and it's really fun to see. But I think BG's a good team. I think they can separate themselves in the end for sure.
And that one really sticks out to me, too, because it feels really, really important for St. Thomas. They're only a little bit ahead of Ferris State and Lake Superior State there in terms of point percentage. And, you can say what you will. I'm sure you have your opinions on which of those teams are, definitively better, worse, however you want to look at it. But, their margin's not exactly wide there.
St. Thomas is underachieved, I think, at the beginning part of the season. And that's why they were pretty low. They were third to last in the CCHA for a lot of weeks, and they've gone on a little bit of a tear as of late. And they took a road win against Minnesota State this last week as well, which, as we know, Minnesota State is probably the best CCHA team, although Augustana is sitting in that top spot. So they underachieved to begin the season, but they're getting hot now. They have one of the top goal scorers in the CCHA in Cooper Gay. Liam Malmquist as well set their program record for the most points in a season. It was impressive a couple weeks ago when he hit that mark, and so early in the season comparatively. So they're a formidable team. Their offense is really there. They got some pretty good goaltending as well. If they can put it all together, I think they can beat anybody in the CCHA, and that's why it's going to be a tough goings on for Bowling Green at home. But they're an equally talented team. We saw offense this weekend. We saw great defense from Bowling Green as well, and we have since the turn of the year. We've seen it all from BG, and Christian Stover is a question mark for sure in that, but I like the direction of the skaters at least and how this team has gone over the last couple.
I do want to touch on Christian Stover, but before we do, I don't want to skip over, the recent going-ons. Very fortunate position, thanks to, Rick Crow, a longtime WBGU supporter, BG hockey supporter, to be able to, send you guys to travel these kinds of places. Just, tell me a little bit about how is the trips, the sights, the sounds, and then, we can certainly get into the games as well. But
yeah, Marquette's a beautiful place. I think Henry and I were a little bit shocked. It was our first time here, and even campus was beautiful. The facilities were really nice. We got to go into the Superior Dome, which is their indoor football/soccer/lacrosse stadium, wood built. It's really cool. It's definitely a Uper place. They got a bunch of nature and Olympics honorees and trophy cases and stuff, and it was really cool to see. The scenery is obviously beautiful. I think in the next couple days or so, we're gonna go on BG_FMSN on Twitter and post some of the pictures that we took over this last week. There was snow on the ground, probably a couple of inches. We got to explore a decent amount early on Saturday, and it was beautiful. It was a lot of fun. The hockey facility, everybody was really kind. Obviously, we did better than they did on the weekend, so that was also a plus as well. But the arena was real cool, the Barry Event Center, and it was a really fun weekend to say the least.
Awesome. Let's take it back.
I should also say thank you to Rick Crow for sponsoring our travel. He said it. He sponsored the first intermission report this year that we have on all BGSU broadcasts. So thank you to Rick Crow and sponsoring our travel. He's the only reason we're up here. So for sure, thank you.
I was going to pay about a 7.5 hour trip up there, right? By driving?
Oh yeah, probably 8 with one stop in there to get gas. But yeah, it was a haul. So. Been a lot of fun. Wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, once again, as Ben already said, shout out to Rick Crow. Thanks so much for supporting our content and our ability to cover the hockey team with the travel, putting Ben out there in the middle of wherever, whenever possible to get our calls and keep us posted. So let's talk about the actual ice from the weekend. Talk about what you saw Saturday, and it got an overtime win in regulation in what felt pretty comfortable last night.
Yeah, it was a pretty good game 2 nights ago. BG played very well in the first period, but didn't get a score. Just some puck luck things not going their way. I mentioned it on the broadcast a couple times. Their goaltender, Ryan Ouellette, he got pulled in the second game because BG attacked him perfectly. They really solved him in the net. But in the first game, they like to shoot from deep and go for rebounds. And that wasn't really working against Ouellette. He was holding onto the puck and freezing play a lot, and he was shutting down all that offense BG likes to produce with the rebound chances. So in the second game, they made a great adjustment, and they started shooting 4 goals from about mid-range instead of shooting from deep and hoping for a rebound. And every single of those, 4 of the 5 goals plus the empty netter at the end were shot from mid-range from Bowling Green, and no tips in front, which we haven't seen at all this season. We haven't seen any just clean shots from Bowling Green. And it was really nice to see, to know that they could make that adjustment and be so effective with the shooting from more mid-range. And I think that's a testament to how Willie coaches this team as well, that he likes the shot volume and the rebounds out in front, but he understood that the goaltender was there to shut it down very well. And he came out with his game plan and Ouellette got pulled through the second midway through the second period. he only had 12 saves and 3 goals allowed, and he got pulled for the bench goalie for Northern Michigan, which is a testament to Willie and how he coached that team, and a testament to the guys and how they executed a great game plan. And shout out to Jackson Niedermeyer as well, and all the defensive players on the team. 2 defensemen scored. Tommy Pasterson had a goal and an assist. Eric Parker had the first goal of the season. Both had the first goal of the season, actually. Jackson Niedermeyer, who's more of a defensive forward, had a goal and an assist on the Friday game, as well as the game winner. He's got 2 goals this season, both of them game winners. And the Saturday game, he had some real good shifts. And Ethan Scardina had, I think, 3 goals on the weekend and a couple of assists to go along as well. The best offensive performance he's had in over a year for sure. And he's more of a defensive guy as well. Almost every point scored by Bowling Green was off defensive-minded forwards and defensemen, which is really nice to see. It was nice to see them get in the column there and to show the depth BG has, and there's nobody on the team that can affect the game in a positive way offensively or defensively. So it was really nice to see that. It was nice to see how well Stover played before he got pulled out to injury, and it was really nice to see how Willie coached, and it was very, very consoling to watch the team play how they did.
I do want to touch on that because I think, as you know, the stove has been hot, as the Bleacher Creatures have been saying lately. It is, certainly always worth attention when injury to such a key player in a sport like hockey happens like that. What did you see there? What's the outlook look like right now? Is there any word from Willie on that?
Yeah, no word on the outlook yet. We're probably going to wait till the Wednesday press conference to figure out what the outlook is. I find it hard to believe that he's going to play against St. Thomas based on what happened on the ice. It was a shot from the left wing into him. He blocked it with the kicker, and it hit his knee. And immediately he fell to the ice, started rolling around there for a second. The referee blew the play dead, and the trainer was even on the ice before the whistle blew. So, it was an unfortunate thing to see. The Barrie Event Center got quiet because they knew, based on his reaction, how bad it was. I saw him grabbing his knee. Whether it was the back of it or the front of it, I couldn't tell. I'm hoping that he just hyperextended it, or it was just a really bad bone bruise or something, but he had to be helped off the ice. Skated off on one skate. It was his right leg, so it's going to be a lower body for sure. Probably a right leg injury, if I had to guess. And, he's been one of the key points for Bowling Green winning all these games. He's been the hottest goaltender in the CCHA, a top 10 goaltender in the nation since he's been playing since the first weekend in December. So it's a tough loss for BG, but that means their defense has to step up, and Cole Moore in that as well has got to get back to where he was last year at that hot streak that he has. So they got a guy that can do it. It's just whether or not he's going to play like that and whether or not Stover's going to be back for the rest of the season.
What do you think? You've got, as you said, a very important series coming up against St. Thomas, and we've got question marks around Christian Stover's status. Cole Moore, as we saw last year and early in this year, certainly a more than capable goalkeeper as well. But then also you look at him coming in yesterday, and you see a pretty quick concession of a goal within that same period by him. Do you have any concerns around his play if push comes to shove here and Stover's not able to go?
No, frankly, I don't think that the defense in front of him has been very well when he's played in the goal. I think that's just a luck thing. I think he just hasn't had a lot of defensive help, and I think the way Bowling Green played defensively this weekend, he should have defensive help. The goal that he gave up, he didn't even have a save yet, but he came in cold off the bench, and it's not unreasonable that he gave that up. It was a real good move by Tanner Latch, and it's something that doesn't show on the score sheet. I don't know if you guys saw it. It was an empty net goal, and while that's odd with 8 minutes left, Dave Shyatt, the head coach of Northern Michigan, very smartly pulled the goalie, knowing that Bowling Green has struggles with the 6-on-5, and put a lot of pressure on Cole Moore right away. And thankfully, Bowling Green was able to get the puck back after that goal, hold on to it, and not allow the goalie to get pulled again. But that made it a 2-score game. And Tanner Latch made a great move from the outside, toe dragged it across the blue paint and into the right side and just beat Cole Moore. Probably in the same situation would have beat Christian Stover. So I have no concerns about that, really. He played perfect the rest of the way. He's still a great goaltender. We saw that last year. He can still get back to that. I'm 100% sure. Just whether or not he will, and whether or not, as good as Cole Moore is, Christian Stover has been better this season. You want him back. So, I think they can get away with this weekend with Cole Moore, but it's definitely Stover should be on the top of every hockey fan's minds and when he's going to get back and get back to the hot stove that we've known over the last couple of months.
Certainly been a central point of the success for the Falcons as this season has continued on. Looking ahead a little bit at the schedule, we mentioned this St. Thomas series. You've got a USA Hockey exhibition on Valentine's Day, so no better way to spend your Valentine's Day than watching some hockey exhibition.
I know, right?
Stuff you dream of. And then after that, you look ahead at Bemidji State and then hosting Lake Superior State, and then just like that, you're in CCHA play. So do you see Bowling Green being able to move in the standings at all? Because to me, looking at it, you really, save for this St. Thomas where you like hope to split. I think you can realistically come away with all the points against Bemidji State and Lake Superior State. Whether or not you do is a different question, but it's the potential's there.
Yeah, I don't see, barring epic collapse by Augustana and Minnesota State, I see Bowling Green fighting for that third spot with Michigan Tech. I think if they play like they should the rest of the way, they'll hold on to top 4 in the CCHA, which is home playoff. It's just whether or not they're going to get the 3rd seed or the 4th seed, which could be the difference between playing Bemidji State or Lake Superior State, as you said, and St. Thomas or Michigan Tech, depending on how things go. So that's going to be a big spot right there. You want to take as many points as possible. I just think Minnesota State and Augustana are Minnesota State certainly, Augustana a little bit better than Bowling Green. That's not to say Bowling Green can't beat them, but you want the best seeding possible. You want to face them at the last possible second. So I think they're fighting for 3rd with Michigan Tech. I haven't had a chance to check Michigan Tech's schedule the rest of the way. I'm looking at cards right now, like not looking at the schedule.
As you should.
I think they'll hold on to their home playoff. But it's all going to depend on how St. Thomas plays. Henry Costco has pulled it up for me. They played Bemidji State, Augustana, and Fair State, and St. Thomas. So they have a tough schedule the rest of the way too. They got St. Thomas, Augustana, and Bemidji. So, anything can happen. I think they can very easily get that 3rd spot, possibly even the 2nd, depending on what happens with Augustana and Minnesota State. So I would look for any of those top 4. It would be very disappointing if they missed out on a home playoff based on how well they played this season. I think everybody would be comparing the season to a Ty Eigner season if that happens. And that's, it's very possible. It's the CCHA, anything can happen. But I think the way they played this season, they'll take care of business, take 4, 5, 6 points against Bemidji and Lake Superior State, and that should be good enough to hold on to that home playoff. If you take so many points, and even if you just split with St. Thomas, that's a pretty good way to end the season right there. And then you're worried about the Mason Cup.
And then it harkens back to me to something I think we talked about in the fall, to shed, the biggest thing to me, to shed that label of, well, this is kind of the same old that we've seen a little bit in the past few years, the end of the Ty Eigner tenure. Like, I think getting a win in that CCHA playoffs, even if, you don't have to win it all necessarily, but like in year 1 under Willie, I think getting a win really kind of sheds that, moves us forward a little into this new era that we are, really already in.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's been since 17, 18, or 19. I forget when Bowling Green has won. Actually, I think it's 2019 in the WCHA, when they were still in the WCHA against Bemidji State, the last time they won a playoff series. Eigner, I think that was his first year when he won that one. Didn't win one since. Bowling Green's had a home, as many experienced hockey fans know, against Fair State. They lost in overtime at home twice against Ferris State. It's kind of a rivalry series, but that was David and Goliath type comeback for Ferris State in that one. And so it's going to be big for BG hockey fans to win a Mason Cup series. And again, the way Bowling Green's played this season, I have a hard time believing that they can't compete with any other team in the CCHA with the way their defense and offense has been, especially if they get Stover back. Willie's game plan seems to be working. The guys are bought in. They're an experienced team. I like their odds against any. And in a 3-game set, I like Bowling Green's odds against Augustana. They played tight with them. Minnesota State didn't play the best series and still was able to take Minnesota State to overtime. So I like the way Bowling Green's played, and I like the way the rest of the outlook looks for BG. And I also like their odds in getting a home playoff win. I think that would be really big for the community and for the team as well, and for Willie in his first year back.
I think of our major teams currently in play right now, by far the source of the most excitement or reason for the most excitement around them is definitely the squad on the ice. Before we pivot, because you and Henry are our softball lead beats for Falcon Media Sports Network. But because we didn't do it at the hour, I do want to quickly throw out our trivia question, and we're not going to go away for it, because if you know it, you're going to know it pretty quickly, and if you didn't, if this one slipped through the cracks for you, you're not going to know it. And Ben, Henry, feel free to get on the board also, but I'd let the room answer first because I know that Ben is going to know it at least. Or I feel pretty good that he's going to know it. So This weekend, a junior defenseman for the hockey team, there's going to be questions all over the place. Some of them are going to be easier. But a junior defenseman scored his first goal of this season, and can you name him? We're going to start with Foster because he looks a little bit...
Oh, come on, that's not fair. No, I have no clue who that is. I apologize, Ben. I don't keep up with hockey that much.
Chaz and Tyler both put their hands up pretty quickly. Let's hear Chaz. Who do you think it is?
So I wrote the recap.
So I'm going to have you pause for a minute then. So Tyler.
Jackson Niedermeyer.
Tyler says Jackson Niedermeyer. Chaz, who do you got?
It was Jackson Niedermeyer, wasn't it?
On Saturdays. I should have specified. On Saturdays.
I believe you said junior defenseman.
A junior defenseman in Saturday's game against Northern Michigan scored their first goal of this season.
Doesn't his... Wow. Okay, yeah. No, I don't. Doesn't his name start with a P? Or his last name?
It does.
His last name does start with a P, yeah.
That's what... it's like, it's right in the back of my mind. I can't place it.
Henry, I imagine you also know it as you were there, and I'm going to go ahead. Tyler looks stumped still, so I'm going to turn it over to Henry and Ben. Can you tell me who that junior defenseman is?
Henry, you want to make a guess? Yeah. No, that's okay. Henry was filming all weekend, so he didn't get to see numbers.
That's valid.
It was junior defenseman Eric Parker playing on a line with Ben Watsy on Saturday's game. Had a nice wrist shot from the right wing with Seth Fighton in front that was screening the goalie. It was as much Fighton's as Parker's, but it was really nice for him to get. If I'm not mistaken, it's his 7th career goal as well, and a big one for him. Not the biggest offensive guy, but to go along with his 5 assists, pretty decent scoring for him this season. And he's a big defenseman for Bowling Green. He does some pretty good things. So it was really nice to see him get his first.
Absolutely right.
I assume that is who you're talking about.
That is, in fact, Eric Parker. Thank you, Ben, for giving us that one. Unfortunately, that's going to drop a couple of people in the standings a little bit. Chaz, you're not 0-2, at least under my hosting
on
the Zig Zone Trivia. So
I'm not a trivia guy.
On-air trivia, not Chaz McNeil's strong suit, as Tyler is well aware.
Oh, I'm well aware for baseball.
It works going along. It works going along with that Mickey Mouse Athlete of the Week selection during the show.
Oh, if we're going Mickey Mouse selection, let's go for what was your pick, Ben? Stover?
My pick?
Yeah.
It's Christian Stover, and I think he's got a real good chance considering he gave up 2 goals this weekend.
But isn't he all?
And got 2 wins.
I don't know.
I don't know.
No, I will say before we move on, because we do need to keep moving. However, Reese Riemann broke a program record, so we're just gonna throw that out there.
She did. She's gonna. She's gonna get it.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely she
so.
get it.
This is Chaz conspiring to keep the only Mickey Mouse award on there, even though Stover deserves it.
Let's ask your boss Lucas about that. We'll see. We'll check in with him.
We'll see.
All right, we're going to move ahead, though, because as I already said, Henry and Ben, you are our softball go-to guys for this season, and the season is starting up real quick. What are we looking forward to here?
We're looking forward to the UFC Upstate tournament starting schedule here. So it's like 5 games here.
Oh, Henry, I've only got you a little bit here.
Yeah, we can switch AirPods.
A little technical sputter here.
How about now? Is that
okay? That's way better. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I should see both of them. Yeah. So I was saying, we're starting off here at the USC Upstate tournament. Here they're going to play 5 games: 2 against USC Upstate, 2 against Monmouth on Friday and Saturday before wrapping it up against Akron on Sunday, and then they'll take a quick week off before they head over to Oklahoma for their second big tournament over there. But, there are some good teams here. Akron, obviously a MAC team. It's interesting they're playing a MAC game so early on in the season, but Akron finished 7th in the MAC standings last year, so that'll be a good matchup to kind of see where Bowling Green is at in terms of MAC competition, especially early on in the year. And when we were talking to head coach Michelle Gardner, she point out the strength of USC Upstate last year, and that's also going to be kind of a good benchmark for this team in terms of what we're going to see from them in the future. But as far as the series goes, we have kind of a depth chart worked out in terms of who we're likely going to see in a starting lineup, in a starting role this season. But, in these first couple of tournaments, it's likely that we'll see a lot of mix and matching in terms of, finding out who Coach Gardner likes in certain positions, maybe switch a couple of people around from last year in terms of where they're going to play in the field and the lineup. So it'll be definitely interesting to, see where we're at after this weekend coming up here.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting position to be in, in the time that those of us here have been at Bowling Green, really no strangers at this point to the arrival of new coaches, I don't know how true that is when you look around like the landscape of sports, but like at least here, you look at both basketball teams from last year, hockey this year, swim and dive, gymnastics, a lot of turnover to hopefully take a positive step. Talking a little bit more broadly, last season was candidly a very rough season for the softball team. I don't think it was something that anybody in that coaching staff or on that roster really wanted to see go the way it did. My question to you: what do you think? Do you have any expectations of anything in particular? Just be better. How much better? What are you looking at?
Well, it's going to be tough. We saw a lot of talent leaving in terms of graduates as well as Erlen Nogue, top statistical hitter last season for the Falcons, going over to Kent State. So we have a lot of talent leaving, but we have talent coming in as well with these new freshman recruits. So this Kyra Henney coming in. And then we also have Kendall Matthews, the lone transfer from the season, coming in from Lakeland College, who she hit over 300 last year. I believe it was 310, and she made the conference first team over there last year. So she'll likely be going right into a starting role. But, yeah, when we talked to Coach Gardner, she said her expectations weren't exactly super high. All she wants to see is an improvement. And, again, she doesn't really quite know where the team is going to be at. So, she's definitely positive in terms of believing that this team can be better than 6 wins last year. And I think I'm positive as well. I think we saw a lot of chemistry and we saw a lot of great things, last year in terms of some players that could definitely develop coming into this year, and, especially in the pitching staff and all the things that Michelle Gardner brings from past teams in terms of her development ability. I think the team, has the potential to be a lot better than maybe the last couple of years.
Do you think there's any particular player that just, more success relatively is going to, kind of come from the back of, any player who's going to specifically, bolster the success of the team?
Well, I'm looking at Addie Martin, of course, coming in this year. She'll be the starting third baseman, I think more than likely, coming into this weekend. Freshman last year, sat out with an injury. She's coming in as a redshirt freshman this year, and I know when we sat down with the players, a lot of them were extremely optimistic in terms of what her performance is going to be this season, both on the field and at the plate, as well as Starla Anderson. I know Ben and I have been in discussion whether she's going to be pitching or she's going to be just playing first base, but when we sat down with Coach Garner, I think she made it decently evident that they're going to at least try her at the pitching spot next year. And we know her offensive production is going to be there. She's going to be that first baseman who can really produce offensively, and she'll be able to produce from on the mound as well. Maybe you can make the comparison to a possible DJ Newman type player, depending on what sort of run she'll get at either position. And then also, I always like to look at Kendall Matthews. That transfer, she's going to come in and maybe try to boost the energy from a team that has a lot of success, and from her season that had a lot of success, coming in here and trying to transfer that over as well. And I know Ben is very high on Payne Steffes, outfielder with a lot of speed, a lot of fielding ability, and potential leadoff hitter for her in that position. So some players there.
I'm going to give Chaz a little bit of a call out because he made a little bit of a face at the DJ Newman comparison there.
That's high praise. You're throwing out DJ Newman.
Well, we'll see what happens here. I'm not going to say, performance as of right now. Her stats last year, she was a 220 hitter and 776 ERA as a pitcher. last year. But, she's going to play into Gardner a little bit more. They're going to give her a lot more run. And, we'll see. Obviously her ceiling is a DJ Newman type player. I think her floor this year is a lot higher than it was last year. I think we'll see her perform a lot better offensively, and she'll get a lot more chances, maybe better quality chances, as I know Coach Gardner was really emphasizing, how they're going to run all the pitching staff, together and maybe throw some games together rather than having just a normal starter. One point they're going to do some, maybe have an opener and then just, have multiple pitchers, 4 or 5, maybe even in the game at many times. But we just arrived here at a rental car place, so we're going to have to head out here. But thanks for having us, Holden. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for calling in. Appreciate you keeping us up to date on everything going on for softball and hockey. You boys have a safe rest of your trip, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, have a good rest of the show.
Did he say have a good rest of the trip?
He did.
Yes, yeah, he did. He did.
That'll cut good.
It's been a long couple days.
They
have had a long. Unironically, Ben and Henry did a lot of work this weekend, and we're going to be a lot better off.
Appreciate them calling in too.
Taking their time.
Drive, yeah.
So. Awesome from them. We're going to go ahead and move on, talk a little bit, because not quite as soon as softball, but Chaz, you look like you have something.
I have breaking news that's completely unrelated to anything, but it is breaking news. Offensive coordinator for Ohio State, Chip Kelly, is the new Raiders offensive coordinator.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
That's shocking.
Yeah, absolute break. So Ohio State win a national championship, and they lose Jim Knowles to Penn State and Chip Kelly to the Raiders.
That's what
Chaz,
happens,
raise
though.
your hand if either of your 2 favorite football teams retained a coordinator.
No hands raised.
Raise your hand if you're Holden.
I'm
this
not
is for
chirping you. I'm not chirping you. I'm on this.
Okay.
We're in the same boat.
I mean, you are a Dolphins fan, though.
Chad's about to jump over the table right now.
I'm having a bad football off season, but the regular season was all right. So anyway, going to the very exciting topic.
Yeah, why don't you just take it away, Chaz, since you're so eager to get on the mic and talk about the baseball season a little bit coming up.
Tyler, I know you and I are excited about this.
Oh, yeah.
So yesterday was the second inaugural first pitch dinner for Bowling Green Baseball. It functions sort of as a fundraising event to get donors and current alumni back into the building, former BGSU baseball players, and get everybody in one room to kind of enjoy each other for one night. And last night, it was John Mitchell was the speaker. He was part of a couple of those 70s BGSU baseball teams, a very successful businessman, and he was one of the bigger donors for BGSU baseball's comeback back in 2020. He was one of those guys that stepped up, donated his support, his financial support, his literal support, and brought this program back under Coach Kyle Halleck. So it was really interesting to have him. And the whole night, I mean, there were some new faces, some new freshmen for the baseball team that were there. It was the whole team, obviously. Coach Kyle Halleck brought his 2024 MAC regular season champion trophy
and
to the event. The ring, too. He put the ring on mid-speech. I mean, this is a passionate guy. But so there was former Falcon Media Sports Network director Steve Iwanek was the MC of the event. He hosted it. And then Derek Vandermeer, the athletic director, had a talk. John Mitchell as well, Coach Kyle Halleck. And it was just a really nice event. We'll have coverage of that coming out for you guys shortly on bgfalconmedia.com. But yeah,
it was a pretty star-studded event, though.
There was Scott Loeffler,
Derek Vandermeer was there along with Rodney Rogers. You had Danny Schmitz, the former third-year coach of the team, was there. Alex Del Piombo
was there.
Michelle Gardner was there, the softball coach. So really a ton of people.
Tyler Ross, former BGSU baseball player. He was on the team last year.
Jack Krause, too?
So Jack Krause, I believe so.
Yeah,
we
think we saw
it was a blink and you miss a cameo from Jack Krause.
Allegedly.
But yeah, it was a really nice night. Everybody really just seemed to be excited to start the season. And you look at where this program currently is, and you can't be anything other than excited. Obviously, cautiously optimistic. This team still has a lot more to prove. But Tyler, from you and I talking to Coach Halleck, him saying, this is this is going to be a good team.
Oh yeah, this team is ready to go. Everyone that we talked to, everyone that talked at that event, they're all ready for the season to begin. It's a really interesting sense around the team because they are not satisfied, but they're happy with how last season went to a degree. Open a ton of eyes, 17-game win streak. I believe it's 11 straight 11 records they set last year for the team, somewhere around that number. But it didn't end the way they wanted to. 2 straight losses in the MAC tournament. They get bounced by Western Michigan Ball State, fall short of a MAC tournament championship, got the regular season championship. So they still have a lot that they want to prove coming into this season. But something else that we learned at that event, too, was Derek Vandermeer gave an update on the fundraising numbers. Of course, BGSU Baseball has announced earlier this academic year that they are raising money for field improvements for Stellar Field. They want to install a new turf field, and they also would like to add some lights and some other things around the field. They really shouted out all the donors that have pitched in money. Oral Hershiser had a video, phoned in there, couldn't make it due to a hip surgery coming up, but he did phone in and offered his support. Him and a few other donors donated $50,000 to that. But Paul Hooker has donated a ton to this program. He has offered 2 $500,000 match donations. So he had a $500,000 donation that if it got matched, he would donate that $500,000. So they raised $1 million total with that, and he's offering another $500,000 if it's matched by other donors. And they're very close to that mark, Chess.
Yeah, they're only about $250,000 away. It's already halfway there.
Yeah.
Derek Vandermeer said during the event that they were getting calls up until the night of the event yesterday, the first pitch dinner. It was happening right before he had to put on his orange tie and his suit coat. But, I mean, we heard for sure confirmed that they're at the stage for lights.
Yes.
There was no word on turf, and we've heard mixed things. If it's going to be turf first, if it's going to be light. I think I can speak for both of us where we say feel like light's a little bit more important just for longevity of a game.
It sounds like more than likely turf first. I think the goal is, though, for both, but I think Derek Vandermeer said they're hoping to reach their fundraising goal in about a month from now. They're going to try to close the deal with that.
That's really crazy when you think about the fact that the fundraising was supposed to be capped off by the end of the 2025 season. To have it done before the start of the season would be such a monstrous show of support for Bowling Green baseball, for Coach Halleck, for, honestly, Derek Vandermeer, for what he's been able to do to this program as well. The only thing I will ask, though, can we get real bathrooms at Stellar? That's the only thing I ask. I like the allure of the porta potties, but I mean, how hard would it be to just get some plumbing? No.
I will say, though, Chaz, thinking back to the event, something that I just remembered, probably the coolest moment of the event is, Derek Vandermeer finishes his speech, and he kind of forgets to introduce Kyle Halleck. Kyle Halleck just comes walking up to the podium, the stage there. Before Kyle Halleck can get a word in, the entire crowd there gets up on their feet and gives him about a 30-second standing ovation.
The standing O was awesome.
And you could see Halleck got just a little bit emotional there. He got a little bit, said that was something that he'll never forget, what the crowd did for him there. And that's it's just that, thinking of that moment and thinking that 4 or 5 years ago this program didn't exist for a few weeks there, that it was cut out of the budget here. It's pretty remarkable, the comeback that this program's been able to have, the success they had last season, the success they're set up here for the future. And, hopefully if everything goes correctly by the end of this season, right after this season ends, you're going to see some groundbreaking at Stellar Field and some improvements being made there with the facilities.
And Tyler, I don't know how you felt about this. This is a little jokingly, but there was a lot of standing. There was a whole lot of standing. It felt like every time somebody went up to give a speech that they first had to acknowledge 7 or 8 to 12 people at a time. And now, obviously, that is very good to recognize and respect those that came before you and also those that are coming up, like the freshmen that are joining this team and just the current 2025 team as a whole. But I feel bad for guys like Hooker and Coach Halleck, who are probably standing half that event just going up and
down. They
down.
had to get up quite a bit, but I mean that just speaks to how much those guys have done for this program. That there's certain people in that room that, like, I mean, it was pointed out too. Danny Schmitz, the former 30-year baseball coach of Bowling Green, he didn't have to step down from that role when the program came back. He decided to step down for that and clear a path for Kyle Halleck to lead this program. And that takes a lot for a coach to do, to voluntarily step away in what you think is the best interest for a program. But, I mean, you think about what those guys have done, what Hooker has done, what people like Kyle Halleck have done, the big donors in that room, the big alumni, the big supporters of this program. To get it to where it is now after having to start from scratch 4 or 5 years ago, it's very impressive.
And I got to say, I know we're not doing a full baseball preview because we've got softball and we've got our own baseball preview coming out later this week. But, man, there are some guys on this team that I can tell the listeners right now that you have not heard of before.
Yeah.
But you will get sick of hearing how much these players will do because there's some studs. I'm not going to spoil it. You can check out our preview that will be on bgfalconmedia.com later this week. But
February 7th, to be specific, that'll come out.
We're not trying to steal any of the sunlight away from softball, but it's exactly a week away from baseball. So, but yeah, very excited. I think as a whole, this program's in a much better place than really it's been in at least 2 decades, I'd have to say, or nearly 2 decades.
Yeah, you could argue the best it's ever been. If you look at the financial support, that could be an argument there.
Some of those 90s teams would have a word with you.
Yeah, that'd be tough competition there. But either way, I mean, I think this program is set up for a lot of success this upcoming season.
I think it's certainly a tall order to, label an expectation of the team based on just how unprecedented, especially for this program, last year's success was.
17 straight wins, going to be tough to match there.
But even so, it somehow feels like there's more optimism than ever. And I mean, there really is. And I think that just speaks to, the culture around that team and program and the optimism, as well as like the confidence in Coach Halleck and everything that program's doing.
Yeah, I mean, to wrap it up, I think what you said there was great. I mean, you look at last season, I thought I was sticking out my neck saying I think they're going to make the MAC tournament. I think they're going to be one of the top 6 teams that at the end of the season. And you didn't really know what to expect going into last season. You thought there was a chance they do something good. I don't know if no one thought they'd do what they did except the people. Of course, on that team always had the highest belief in them. But now going into this year, it's different in the sense that you do expect a lot out of this team, and you expect them to be there at the end of the season competing in the final game for the MAC Tournament Championship.
Certainly always the hope, but especially when you've got a team that's very clearly shown that, they have that type of upside and potential. Remind me, will you, when is that first game coming up for them?
That'll be
the Day of Love. That's going to be on February 14th.
February 14th. I mean, not March.
Yeah, March 14th. Isn't that the Kent State series or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
That might be the first MAC series,
March 11th through 14th, somewhere around there. Maybe April. Somewhere.
2 baseball beats don't even know the schedule of
how many
baseball.
does it take?
No, but that'll be February 14th, 15th, 16th. They'll be down in Middle Tennessee and
Blue Raiders.
That's a series though. Of course, every player we've talked to is like, yeah, we're all looking forward to the first game, but that's a team they only took 1 out of 3 against last season to begin the year. They had 2 tough losses against them that you could have argued they should have won. So I think they're going to come out wanting to win that series and possibly sweep that Blue Raiders team to begin the season.
I know I don't need to say it because I know that you two are feeling the same way, but I'm really, really excited that we're finally here after last season. And, it's hard to say how exactly it'll go down, but it felt like we rode really high, and then the way that the tournament kind of played out was just like, oh man, you just wanted more of this team, and it feels like it's been a really long wait, but I couldn't be much more excited.
Yeah, I agree. I think obviously there can be setbacks. We saw that with men's basketball. We all had our minds set up on bigger and better things, but I really do think this BGSU baseball program is so solidly set up right now, support-wise, strength-wise, recruiting wise, you look at some of the guys they've been able to bring in. I mean, Nathan Archer, 12th round pick, was brought into a program that did not exist by this coaching staff. Yeah. It quite literally was not a thing when he was being recruited, and they gave him essentially a promise of a program, and then there he is now in the major league. So I think it really is a testament to how good this program can be, and I don't see it really wavering. Now, obviously, like I said, with men's basketball, there were injuries and stuff like that, but you do, at the end of the day, have a lot more players on a baseball roster. So you never know. But yeah, I'm very excited, and it seems like up is one of the only directions you can go.
Yeah, baseball season is the most exciting time of season. So can't wait for that first pitch on February 14th.
Valentine's Day, a little baseball starting off. Love to see it. We're going to talk real quickly because we've had some really strong performances in our non-revenue sports. Last Sunday, the gymnastics team competed in a tri-meet against Central Michigan and Southeastern Missouri State. They ended up splitting. They got second overall, beating Southeastern Missouri State and losing to Central Michigan, who's kind of had their number since, I think, 2018 is the last time they were able to get a win. But strong performances from a lot of newcomers as well. And in particular, today they fell in a close matchup only by 0.5 to Ball State in a just dual meet. But Megan Bingham's all-around score was 39.075, which, to contextualize, a perfect score across your 4 events would be 40. So a margin of 0.925 away from a perfect score. Certainly nothing shabby there. Bingham was also a third place overall for the overall or all-around competition last Sunday. So definitely some good momentum under Brittany Emmons. They are at I believe that was their first win of the season last week. It sucks certainly to not get the dual win today, but taking steps in a better direction if you've had any eye on this program recently. And then the other non-revenue performance that's really of note is these distance runners, and in particular these freshmen, are just unstoppable. Kylie Cubb is a name we've brought up plenty. Several-time MAC honoree in cross country, ran the 3,000 meters and ran a 9:25 to get 14th overall and breaking the school record held by her teammate Kaylee Perry, a graduate runner and former MAC champion in cross country. But she broke her mark by 9 seconds. That's a lot. It's very non-trivial. But I think the most notable one, and someone who I will be petitioning heavily for when Falcon Media decides on our athlete of the week, freshman Reese Riemann. I was there last fall, not fall 24, but fall 23, when she was a senior at Woodridge and won the state cross country meet. And it was clear, that's a really good runner. And we saw some of the Bowling Green team there. I mean, it was obvious that she was going to be on their radar. And Coach Snelling has said the track is more her element anyway. And school record now broken in the mile. I mean, one of the harder races to run by far. That's so impressive. 4:46.4 was her time. 0.23 seconds ahead of the school record from 1999, and also a 10-second PR for Riemann. That's just, really, really hard to do. And to do that during indoor season when, it's only like their second or third time competing on the year, that's, just special stuff. I think really the standout performance of, the last couple weeks that kind of flies a little under the radar. So that's going to wrap up the non-revenue conversation. And I have one last little topic of discussion for you guys before we go. And this one's completely out of the ballpark of sports. Because today is Groundhog Day, and whenever I think of Groundhog Day, I think of the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, a personal favorite of mine, but not everyone's cup of tea, as Chaz McNeil seems to be signaling. My question to you, Groundhog Day is a movie pretty well acclaimed. I don't think there's a question about that. What is a well acclaimed movie that you think is overrated or outright sucks or you're not a fan of? I'm curious where you stand with that. If you've got anything that comes to mind quickly, I can tell you mine out of the gate. Did not care for Avatar. I don't think the amount that it grossed reflects how good of a movie it is at all. I don't think it's good. That's fine.
It's overrated. I will say that.
I think it's grossly overrated. Any polls? Any thoughts?
I can pull one out. I think that I don't know if it's like critically acclaimed, but I am not the biggest Home Alone fan.
Really?
I really like. I think of all the Home Alones, the first one is low key the weakest.
That's a crazy statement.
I
First
mean,
one's the weakest?
the second one is really good.
I think the second one's better than the first, but I don't know if the first one's the weakest. I think the first two are head and shoulders above any of the other ones.
Is Macaulay Culkin in the third?
He's in the first two. I don't think he's in the third.
If he's not in the third, then it's not the best Home Alone. I think the second one's better. But I mean, you kind of caught us off guard here. We got about 6 minutes.
I sure did. We're a little under the gun here, so I kind of had to just fire it away. But I really
I have one that might be controversial.
Let's hear it.
Black Panther.
Oh, brother!
I think in terms of here's my stance on this. I feel like Black Panther is talked about as like a top 3 Marvel movie.
No.
Or top 5. I hear a lot. You'd be surprised how many people I hear say that. I think it is a great movie. I don't think it's like a top 5 Marvel movie. I don't know if that's a hot take, though.
I think it is a better movie than most of the MCU, but I think it's a worse Marvel movie.
Yeah, I agree
if
with
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because I think
I think Marvel has kind of a specific formula,
Yeah.
and if you're trying to follow that, it diverges. And I think it's a better movie for it, but I don't think it if you're going in wanting like the kind of conventional Marvel movie, it does not get it done as much.
No.
I just feel like
though.
It's a very different Marvel
I feel like
movie.
though it's not as good as I remember it being.
Interesting.
I don't know.
I have a really quick one, one I remember that I get flack for all the time. I hate the Dark Knight trilogy. I hate the Dark Knight trilogy.
You want to take all that off you? I've never watched the Star Wars.
Oh, wow. Maxed out the
No
mic on that one. I was
way.
so shocked.
And I can go even farther.
Wow.
Harry Potter.
Never seen Harry
Never
Potter
seen it.
either.
Wow.
Me
Not
neither.
a fan of franchises.
No.
I don't watch.
How do you feel about The
movies.
Godfather?
Never
Do
seen
not
them.
care for the.
It insists upon itself, Chaz.
It insists because it has a valid point to make.
My favorite movie of all time is the 2008 Speed Racer movie.
That's such a crazy point.
Insane.
You need to watch some more movies.
Dude,
Wow.
you guys don't know. That's a great movie.
Well,
You need to watch
no,
some
I've
more
seen
movies,
it
Foster.
with the monkey in his trunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that's the one part you remember, not any of the other.
If a movie's got a monkey in it, I'm tuned in. Planet of the Apes, King
Absolutely
Kong,
tuned
Those
in.
are Chaz. Those are apes. Monkeys, apes. They're not the same, buddy.
the Mario movie.
That's an ape. Donkey Kong's not a monkey. Name
the
another gorilla,
Croods.
I swear.
The Croods.
Insane.
My God.
I guess there are probably monkeys in that.
Well,
one.
no, his belt is a monkey.
That's true.
Oh, Ice Age, the Crusade or whatever it's called with the
Ice
pirate.
Age? What monkey's an Ice Age?
The pirate
The
one.
pirate one. It's like 3 or
And he's like
4.
he's-
Continental Drift is whatever it's called.
Wow, look at that pull. Speed Racer movie and now Continental
All right.
Drift.
Getting really specific. Well, that's good.
I'll throw in one more. Titanic.
Never
Titanic's
seen it.
overrated.
I think that's a fair take.
Wait,
It's good movie, solid movie, overrated.
DiCaprio's just been better.
Yes.
no way.
DiCaprio has like 3 better performances in that.
The Baz
at least.
Luhrmann Romeo Juliet movie with Leo DiCaprio is a way better Leo DiCaprio
what one?
performance.
Nomeo and Juliet.
Baz
Nomeo
Luhrmann, the
and
director.
Juliet?
Nomeo. Okay.
Nomeo and Juliet.
I think DiCaprio's
That's a
performance
really
in
good
Catch
movie.
Me If You
I like
Can is
that
better than
one.
Titanic.
I think you're just saying movies that Foster's
No.
seen now. So
Hey, that's a
Curious
good movie.
George the
I'm gonna
movie.
cut us here.
That is a great movie.
I'm going to cut it here. Thanks for joining us on the Zig Zone Show. As always, to keep up with all of the content from Falcon Media Sports Network in the realm of BG Sports, you can go to BG Falcon Media, as well as check out our broadcast on BG Falcon Media on Falcon Radio, as well as WBGU 88.1 FM, and also check out the BG Falcon Media YouTube for highlights, as well as some feature stories that are in the works, and our rebroadcasts of this show, as well as any of our broadcasts. We'll see... excuse me. We'll see you next time. For Tyler Kavelitz, Chaz McNeil, Foster Rostai, I'm Holden Ruck. Thanks for joining us here on the Zig Zone. And as always, I Ziggy.
This broadcast has been a Falcon Media Sports Network production. For more BGSU sports news and updates, follow Falcon Media Sports Network on Twitter X at BG_FMSN, BG Falcon Media on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and head over to BGFalconMedia.com.